What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and patch 11.3 is coming for League of Legends, which will be hitting pro play in about a week and a half. So LCS week 2, LEC, I believe it would be week 4. Either way, it's a pretty fun one. There's some really cool stuff in here that I really like. Some individual champion changes, which are fine. I will say I have not been keeping up with solo queue balance really at all. Obviously, I've been keeping up with pro. It's kind of my job. I've been watching a lot. So let's talk about what's going on in 11.3. A whole bunch of stuff, right? Nerfs to like 12 champions, buff to like 11 champions. A lot of item updates that I really enjoy, which is cool. So and some skins. Okay, so Anivia is a little bit weaker. Basically, yeah, the sort of reshape was overtuned, so Q damage is down by a flat 10. AP ratio is down by 10% or 5 percentage points. Ult cooldown, I would argue this is a smaller nerf than you would expect. Unlike a regular ability like, say, Cassiopeia's Twin Fang or something, where the cooldown is a direct DPS measure. Anivia, the cooldown doesn't start until you turn off the channel. So this has no way of affecting like the primary DPS, the ability. It affects the ability to, move it after the fact. So the numbers here are going to lie, but here we go all the same. So here's Q damage. This is the base damage of the ability. It's down 14% at level 1. I'm pretty sure you max at second. I'm pretty sure I double checked that, but it would make the most sense anyway. Down, again, only like 5% at the max rank. So, not a huge nerf, but the 10% off the AP ratio pushes this nerf toward 10% at all points in time. That's the math behind it, right? So, obviously you want to have 100 AP at level 1, and you will have more than 100 AP at level 18, but this is just for comparison. Every 100 AP, right, moves the change, halfway, right, towards the 90%, and then over here, it moves it, 1/5 the way towards 100%, or towards 10%, so, yeah, I mean, take from this what you will. Here's basically the nerf there. And then we have the ultimate getting nerfed on top of that one, so, of course, not until level 11 do you care at all. It means absolutely nothing. In general, I'm going to maintain the general idea that ultimate nerfs, I believe, look bigger on paper than they are in actuality. This can change when you're someone like Anivia, whose ultimate is actually a core part of kit functionality. Now, certainly, it still doesn't do anything 1 through 5, and in this case, nerf doesn't do anything 6 through 10 either. So, like, there's a lot of time where this really is not a change, but yeah, you will actually feel these cooldown changes because ulting is part of the Anivia sort of core combat loop. So these should be pretty big. Some nominal DPS losses and everything else. So yeah, it's fairly reasonable. Next up is Cho. Apparently, Cho'Gath is doing too well, primarily tank Cho, which is why they're nerfing Emax. So instead of 22 to 82, it's 22 to 70. Cho'Gath deals his base is total AD because he's to auto attack. It deals a percentage of his, I believe, target's max health, which doesn't scale on rank, only scales on feast stacks. And then it also deals some flat damage over the top. So this kind of by definition is underrepresented. What I should say is the damage is lower here than it's going to be in most real-world applications, in that other champions are going to buy health, especially melee ones, which is what this ability is going to be targeting. And additionally, Cho'Gath is going to have feast stacks, which is going to further increase the base damage's ability. So ultimately, the actual nerf here is smaller than it looks. That said, they seem to not be wanting to hit Cho'Gath that hard. And keep in mind, this is up to 36 damage off an ability. So at level 9, every auto attack does 213 instead of 201. Yeah, I mean, that is still a fairly meaningful damage cut to a primary damage ability, so they're nerfing Emax Cho in melee matchups. I think that's fine. Next up is Elise, who is losing 0 to 20 damage on now ranged Q, and losing 0 to 40% attack speed on melee W. Now, one thing that people might have seen looking at Elise changes and looking at public data from the patch coming in, from, hey, how did 11.2 land? Based on how a lot of websites measured win rates, usually because they're looking at things like, hey, what rank are you in now? Oh, at start of season, so all the challenger players are in platinum. Okay, they aren't all, but like still, right? You have basically fake lowered. So I'll start over. Generally speaking, the higher your account is in the ladder, the higher your overall win rate is. So think about it this way. If you are the literal best player in League of Legends, you're going to have an above 50% win rate. The game can't find players good enough to beat you. If you're the second best player in League of Legends, there's only one player better than you. You have 5 opponents. You're going to win more than you lose. And this will trickle down forever. Up until you are the average League of Legends player, where now it will find better and worse players on either side of you. So in general, the higher rated you are, the more inflated your win rate is. This can be, this is also a little bit chicken and egg. This can be, again, what I said, is that the game can't find good enough players for you. But it can also just be that, well, you got up there because you won more than you lost. So by virtue of being diamond, your win rate is positive, right? Like, that is also somewhat true. So in general, higher ELOs, higher MMRs, higher ranking bands have higher win rates, which means, you know, you can actually do this and like verify on websites that will like give you this publicly, give you this information publicly. Is like your win, like it'll be like, here's the average win rate of a champion in Diamond. It's like 51.2% or something, right? So when you are measuring by default Plat Plus, as most websites tend to do, you are measuring the top like 15% of players, which means you have inflated win rates. So when players come to Reddit and say like, look how OP Akali is with her 50.5% win rate, and it's like, yeah, but the average is 51, so she's actually below average in the top 15% of players. So head tilt. Anyway, circling back on this, because of the season reset, ranks got compressed back down. And that means that Platinum Plus was really more like high diamond to GM, right? And so suddenly we had a bunch of inflated win rates, which means we suddenly had champions like Elise who objectively lost power and gained 1.5% win rate. All this to say, a lot of people's like win rate tabulations from last patch were not trustworthy. Let's move on to the topic at hand, which is Elise getting more direct nerfs, as she was still an overperforming jungler. I assume the way Riot was doing their data internally, they could account for this pretty well. That's my strong suspicion that they knew what they were doing here. So, okay, let's talk about it in actual fact. Okay, so Elise, basically, her Q at full health and her Q with a target at, I believe, 1/4 of their health remaining. So much like Elise from last week or 2 weeks ago, this is still using her base health as our example because it doesn't matter, it's close enough. So, yeah, if your target is full HP, the ability, by the way, only deals, yeah, we're looking at 180 to 160, only deals 265 to 245 damage. This is like 2,000 health champion. If they have 2,000 remaining health, your base damage is 265. Right? Like, well over half of the damage of the ability is in the base damage. And I want people to realize this, that, like, Elise is actually really, really base damage heavy. And her AP ratios are trash, because they're like some small percentage of her percent health damage because it scales. Anyway, so yes, this means that losing 20 damage off your Q is actually a pretty meaningful damage drop. And then we said, okay, what if your champion's at like 1/4 HP, so that we're only doing, I think it's 8% of their, you know, of 25% of their health, so only doing, 2% max HP, we're doing like 40 bonus damage or something like that, right? And it's like, well, it's still a 20 damage drop, and it's still 90% off. Like, it's kind of incredible that you cut the percent health damage down to 1/4, and it's still a 10 versus 8% damage drop. Just so much of the damage is the base damage ability. This, I want to be clear, is a very, very big nerf then. This means a lot for Elise. She's going to lose quite a bit of power. Obviously, she still has like 7 abilities, so it's only nerfing 1 of the 7, which makes this nerf also smaller than it looks on paper, but still a pretty big nerf. Then we have her W with attack speed. Does not matter for the first 7 levels of the game. And then, yep, it's 10% reduced attack speed per rank up from there on. So the biggest impact is at level 13. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to lower her overall DPS. It's going to lower her late game. This still doesn't feel like a huge nerf, just because I don't know how often Elise gets to actually sit there and chain auto attack. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like it really has to matter that much, but it certainly is a nerf. Next up, Ezreal is definitely not doing very well, even after Manamune came back, and I think it was smart that Riot waited on Ezreal changes until after they saw what's going on with Manamune. I did see posts on the internet about how Ezreal's AP ratios are pretty bad. I agree Riot could probably buff back some of the AP ratios. We're long past the, Muramana Seraph's build path, because they're now mutually exclusive, so you're not going to have to worry about that, like, dictated build path anymore. Even with Divine Sunder, he's not doing all that well. Ezreal definitely needs some love. And, okay, it's a small AD ratio increase. Ezreal's a champion that tends to dominate pro, even when his win rate is sub 50 in solo queue. I think Riot's aware of this. They're going for fairly delicate buffs here to Ezreal. It's going to be the tune of like 1 to 0.5%. I think it's okay. Like, I don't know. I play Ezreal some. I play bot lane a lot, obviously. I don't really care much that if he's like a little bit weak. I don't know. Who cares what I think? But I think, he'll be a bit weak and I think it's okay. Ivern had absurd health growth. And he's going to lose 0 to 20 off of his E shield. So, here's Ezreal damage, by the way. It's actually pretty meaningful. Now, keep in mind that Ezreal Mystic Shot, so what's nice is the more attack damage you buy, that's fine, because attack damage actually makes this more of a 7% buff, right? As you put points into Q and you've got max rank Q, the base damage is going to carry the damage a bit, so it's only 4% buff, but the more raw AD you build with things like Manamune, the more that the 1/12, I guess it is, so 7%, yeah. The more that the 7% damage increase actually matters. Now, the other part of this, though, is you have things like Divine Sunderer, or if you really want to troll Trinity Force, and even the Muramana, like on hit damage, like there are other sources of damage, but either way, this is still a meaningful damage increase. Okay, so Ivern. Ivern had really, really dumb health values. And now I know when they first made Ivern, he was meant to be melee. Nope. He was meant to be a melee champion, or he was only ranged when he walked into brush. They eventually changed that for, the feels perspective, so that Ivern can be permanently ranged. I think all that made sense. All those were solid changes. And at the time when they were doing those changes to Ivern, they needed to make them buffs because Ivern was not fun to play. He was not satisfying to use. He was, generally not considered very highly of. And so, they wanted to add some feels gains, and they wanted the patch notes to read that Ivern is good. Go try Ivern. So I understand them not nerfing his health when they, gave him permanent range. That said, ranged champions do not need to have 2,200 health at level 18. Ever. So glad they are finally nerfing this down to something that's, honestly fairly reasonable. 585 to 2030 is, I think, acceptable for a ranged champion. It's still on the high side, don't get me wrong, but Ivern doesn't have any natural escapes. Well, okay, that's not true. He has a self-shield and he has a root. So Ivern could be squishy on a baseline and it would be acceptable. One thing that you probably know that I do a lot on this channel is I harp on base stats a lot. And some of it's for things like readability, which can be solved in other ways and whatnot, and consistency, which can be solved in other ways as well. But one thing that I still hold to be true, and I think is actually really, really relevant, is that base stats are the least interesting aspect of power, right? If your champion's going to be 50% win rate, it is a sum of your abilities and your scalings and your interaction with other champions on your team, the enemy team, and your base stats, like your just base aptitude. And in general, always and forever, abilities are more interesting than base stats. Like imagine a 50% win rate champion who could literally only auto attack. They didn't have a QWE or R. They just walked at you and autoed. Like how boring would that champion be? And how absurdly dumb would their base stats have to be for this champion to be balanced, right? And it's just, that wouldn't be a good champion design, right? Obviously. And so using that, using the absurdity argument, can we find the champions with the highest base stats in the game and say, hey, you are probably uninteresting because none of your powers and your abilities, they're all in your base health being 712, right? And certainly there are champions like Cho'Gath and Sion who just get more health than other champions. And I would argue that that's not a base stat. That is their ability saying, hey, you gain a bunch of health. And so when you're Sion and you read the W tools up and you're like, oh, I'm going to gain 600 health from W passive this game, or I'm Cho'Gath, I'm going to get 12 fee stacks this game. That is the more interesting way of having this much health than your base numbers being this. Like, did any Ivern player know their base health at 18 was 2200? I'll bet you Cho'Gath players know they gain health on Feast, though, right? One of these is way more fun, and yet they're the same mechanic. So let's move on, but this is why I will consistently look for outliers of base stats to be like, you're boring. And I want to be clear on one other thing, is that the opposite is not as true. That certainly, yes, if your base stats are very low, you might be quite weak, but it also means that if you're balanced, it's because your abilities are very cool. This can breed frustration, but not always. This one is less cut and dry for me, but we're going to move on to the next topic, which is Ivern's shield is getting weaker to the tune of 0 to 20. So from level like 3 to 4 onwards, it's weaker. And yeah, I mean, these are pretty meaningful Ivern nerfs. He's definitely overtuned. He's definitely doing incredibly well. One thing we are seeing some is things like Ivern Top, where they're using him as a solo laner as a support instead of things like Lulu. And so health growth, a nerf like that is going to generally nerf like a solo lane Ivern because he's going to level more than jungle Ivern will. there's another place that you can get into trouble is if your base stats are really high, or at least your growth is really high, you can have people get poached by going into lanes when maybe you didn't want them to. It's also a way to get people to go into lanes and solos because they want to use the growth. So, it's also a good sort of like tuning lever. Anyway, Jinx is getting a small reshape, which I'm a really big fan of. So talking about base stats, yeah, Jinx had really, really, really high health at level 1, which is a very uninteresting way to be powerful. She could just like auto attack you. Like she would literally go into a minigun form and just auto attack you with more health than you and just win because her stats are higher. She has 30% more attack speed and 50 more health than you do, so she wins. You just auto attack and you win. She was actually a decent lane bully, to be honest. If you could like have your support lock someone down, if they're a pike or something, it was pretty powerful. That said, let's talk about what they're actually doing with her. Lowering her base health. Cool. Good job. They're giving 25 more range on switcheroo, which puts her at 6 to 700. Or 6. There's a table. We'll look at that in a second. But it also makes her bonus attack speed penalty a lot lower. Instead of minus 25%, it's minus 10%. Flame Chompers cost more mana, but they arm faster. And now they always just throw at max range you cast them. Good. I'm a fan of this being how every ability is cast, so good job. So let's talk about it. All right, so she goes 625 to 725 now in rocket form. That is a pretty big deal. Her base health, by the way, indeed, again, way too high. Goes down to about 2,000. 2,000 is my pain tolerance for a ranged champion, by the way. I think it's too high if it's anything above that. 2012 is acceptable. It's fine. But yeah, obviously a bigger nerf in the early game makes her less of a lane bully. I think it's reasonable. As far as her rocket launcher being longer range, yep, that's going to be pretty helpful. It's, a 4% range increase at pretty much all points in time. Obviously there's some rounding, but yep, that's the number. And then here is a quick and dirty calculation of what I believe her attack speed is going to look like. So this is, how much bonus AS does she have? What is she before? What is she after as a result? 180% bonus attack speed is not unreasonable for a late game build. But I want to point out that this looks like, oh my gosh, it's so good. She's like 15% more attack speed. No, she doesn't. Nope, she doesn't. There is actually some kind of strange math going on with Jinx. If this was a year and a half ago, it would be more on the tip of my tongue and the front of my memory. But I mean, basically the way that Riot does attack speed scaling, and attack speed penalty and whatnot, is they basically change your base attack speed, right? So Jinx has I think it's 0.625 attack speed in minigun form. She has let's just pretend we know what it is, right? 0.625 times 0.75. Let's actually add some decimals here. She has a roughly 0.469, or did, right? So, 0.625 times 0.9. In 11.2, she had roughly a 0.469 base attack speed ratio, right? This was her actual base attack speed in rocket form. Now, what they didn't want was for Jinx to objectively lose attack speed just because you transformed. Right? The entire point is that it says you have a bonus attack speed penalty. You have a penalty to your bonus attack speed. When you buy Berserker's Reeves or a Phantom Dancer, you're going to have less attack speed than before. They do not say you're going to attack slower, period. Right? They don't just drop your attack speed by 20% and say, YOLO, we're done. Right? So what they do is they make her base attack speed 0.469. Then they have to give her, what is it? 1 divided by 0.75. They have to give her 33% bonus attack speed, so that when, you get the free bonus attack speed, you're back to, this number, right? We're back at 0.625, right? So Rock Form Jinx had a 0.469 attack rate, base attack speed. She got a free 33% bonus AS, plus her, whatever their scaling is, so that she was back at 0.625 in Rocket Form. Which means that really Jinx just had 33% AS just in the build somewhere. Just that wasn't objectively there, but it meant that at 33% bonus AS, well, that kind of meant you had 25% less value of attack speed. Now, here's where it gets weird, though. Here's where I'm not exactly... the way Riot does it is, it's not dishonest, but it's not the full story. So, the way that Jinx gets 25% less value out of attack speed is not really that her base AS is 0.6469. I mean, kind of, but not really. Because let's pretend you're random champion, your base attack speed is 0.5, okay? If I buy 100% attack speed worth of daggers, I'm attacking twice as fast, right? I am doubling my attack speed, and I'm doubling my DPS. If I'm a theoretically balanced champion, let's say my base AD is 300 because I have like really, really low base attack speed. If I'm a balanced auto attacker and my base AS is 0.5, if I buy 100% attack speed, I double my attack speed, I double my DPS. That's still true. It doesn't really matter what this number is. This number is actually irrelevant. What matters is how many daggers do I buy to double my DPS? How do I double my damage output? Right? In the same way that I can buy a bunch of longswords and double my damage output, I can buy a bunch of daggers and double my damage output. It's the same thing, right? How do I double my DPS as cheaply as possible? So what Jinx has is she has this 0.469, but what she really has is another 33% attack speed over the top, which means I can't buy 100% attack speed. I have to buy 133% attack speed. I have to buy this many daggers to double my attack speed, right? I need to double everything I've already got. So 100% plus whatever I've already been given. This is the real number, right? This is what the part that actually matters. And here's where it gets that little bit weirder. Jinx's attack speed growth is 1% per level. So at level 18, she has, 133 plus that, right? She has 51% bonus attack speed at level 18. Rocket Form Jinx, you get 25% less value from attack speed, is really just a champion that says, by the way, you have 51% attack speed at level 18. You know what Ashe is at level 18? 51%. Rocket Form Jinx has the exact same attack speed scaling as Ashe. Because Ashe also gives you a bunch of free attack speed. She also has, her Q gives her attack speed as well. But Jinx doesn't really penalize you for buying attack speed. In fact, Rocket Form Jinx promotes attack speed more than Minigun Jinx, because Minigun Jinx has like 218% bonus attack speed. You have to buy 200 or like 300% attack speed of daggers to double Minigun Jinx's damage output. You have to buy, 150 attack speed worth of... I hope this makes sense, right? The real calculation is not actually your base attack speed ratio. That's not the part that actually matters. The part that actually matters is how much bonus attack speed your kit has, because all you're trying to do is double your DPS as cheaply as possible. And the more bonus AS percent you have, through things like Minigun, through things like Ashe Q, through things like Tristana Q, the more you have to buy attack speed. This only sorta kind of matters. It only matters because you actually have 33% bonus attack speed. Now, if what it said was your base attack speed is 25%, we just lowered everything 25%, we didn't give you any compensation, whatever, that would further incentivize buying daggers. What it would also do is just simply lower your DPS overall, right? If this was a total attack speed penalty, it would just lower your DPS by 25 or 10%, which means being a minigun form would be a DPS loss, or rocket form would be a DPS loss, means you wouldn't do it. What this really does is just give you 30% bonus attack speed, aka 50% bonus attack speed at level 18, which is totally reasonable for any AD carry. So what they did is they said it's a 10% cut, which means her base AS is actually this instead. So 0.625 divided by this. Yeah, so she has 11% attack speed, which means this plus 17% means she only has 28% bonus attack speed at level 18, right? So when you're in rocket form level 18, you only have 28% bonus attack speed from your kit, which is among the lowest in all of League of Legends. Like, mages don't have this numbers this low, which means Rocket Form Jinx actually, ironically, has the best attack speed scaling of any character in the game. It says minus 10%, but Jinx's base attack speed growth is 1%, and they're only giving her an extra 11% here, which means 28 at 18 is very low, which means Jinx has outstanding attack speed scaling. Daggers are better on Rocket Form Jinx than on any other AD carry in the game. This is a fact. Daggers are better on Rocket Form Jinx than any other AD carry in the game at level 18. Attack speed penalty, by the way. Anyway, Flametrapper's buff is pretty cool. They arm faster. Yeah, they cost more, but whatever. Jinx is going to be, I would say, probably quite a bit stronger, and that feels great. Let's move on. Karma is getting more base mana regen. They're trying to push her into the support role a bit more. They're trying to get her to buy things like Spell Thief. They're trying to say, hey, this is kind of weird, though. Like, of course, they are trying to buff Karma outright. Right? This is an objective buff. This is an objective buff. What is weird is I'm always hesitant to see buffs that buff solo lane Karma at the same time. Certainly, support Karma is not in a good spot. Don't get me wrong. But when you're playing solo lane Karma, you are skipping Spell Thieves, right? So this buff does more to help support Karma than solo lane Karma for sure, because they are never getting Spell Thieves. But they are still glowing. They are still going to always go for something like Mandate or Moonstone Renewer, which means they are still going to be using this with their other item purchases. And they're obviously going to be using this because they have to just, chain wave clear and poke their opponents down. So here is the attack. Here's the mana regen before and after. As a support, you don't even double your attack speed, or I keep saying attack speed because of all the Jinx stuff. You are not even doubling your mana regen. I think this is fine. This is another way to support skew, right? Is to front load all of your base stats into level 1 and not have the growth be very high. This is a cool, sort of clever way to shift champions towards support because they don't need to level as much. I think this is clever and good. Especially for things that are kind of invisible, like mana regen. I think it's okay, especially. Not a fan for things like armor. I think armor and MR really should be a bit more tightly constrained, but that's a different topic. And then, yeah, obviously a strict, 15% mana cost buff on the Q, which is cool beans. She'll still be weak overall, but definitely a meaningful buff. Mordekaiser is getting 2 seconds flat off of his E cooldown. It is what you max seconds, so it's going to be a while till that buff means a lot. But yeah, this is still pretty reasonable. Considering it's your only way to interact with ranged champions or try to bait out riposte and whatnot, or punish when riposte has been used. This is actually fairly reasonable. I think Mordekaiser is also just pretty decent, but also keep in mind that there's a bunch of changes going on to Mordekaiser's items, and so there's a chance that he needs compensation buffs anyway. Overall, reasonable stuff here. Next is Olaf losing 22 flat health and getting less multiplicative attack speed with Berserker's Rage. That's now being shown on the passive icon, which is kind of cool. So Olaf's passive is special in that it is multiplicative attack speed, meaning it multiplies every other source of attack speed in the game. For something like this, I am a fan. I am a fan of this being a cornerstone part of Olaf's kit. When he's getting lower and lower and lower on health, he multiplies everything he has ever bought, his own W, his item choices, all that stuff. It gets multiplied in so that he can go berserk. And I'm a fan of that. I think this makes sense. It's one of the few places where you can I think it's correct to break standards and have a self buff or an ally buff be multiplicative with all other buffs. And so this is a strictly multiplicative attack speed increase. And yeah, if he's at, and by the way, I'm basically saying this is 100% health and this is 0% health. So if he's at 50% right here, it is a 10% DPS drop, just objectively. No matter what else is going on, it's a 10% DPS drop at half HP, and that obviously keeps scaling. And that attacking 2x versus 1.75x is just not that big of a change. There's only 12% down here. So yeah, for a large portion of the game, you're to the tune of 6 to 12% less attack speed. I mean, that is a lot of DPS, right? Unless you are absolutely full for a large portion of the game, you are 6 to 12, okay, let's call it, something like this, right? 6 to 13, 6 to 12, whatever it is. I'm surprised that these numbers went this way. Did I do something wrong? I'm surprised this would go back up. Did I do something wrong? I feel like I did something wrong. I don't know. Because the numbers keep decreasing and then it's jump back up. I don't know what I did here. I don't know. You know what? We're just going to move on. Pretend this was smart. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Oh, yep, I know what I did wrong. I can fix this right now. Hang on. I found it. This is what I did wrong. Okay, cool. There we go. This is what it was meant to be. Cool, we fixed it. I used bad numbers. Okay, so yeah, for most fights, you are, again, 6 to, let's call it here maybe, 6 to 10% less attack speed. And yeah, if you're really low, it's down to 12%. This is a very big deal. This is a very meaningful DPS cut. Keep in mind that until you buy Gore Drinker, the only self-healing Olaf has is when his W is on auto-attacking. And because the passive is multiplicative with the W, that is a very large amount of DPS that you are losing 8 to 10% of. This is a very big deal to Olaf's dueling. This is a very big deal to his jungle clear speed. Yes, he still has his Q. Yes, he still has his E. That's all still good. But this is a very substantial DPS loss. The health cut is going to be a big deal as well. Olaf, I believe, will lose a lot of power in this patch. And, deservedly so. Pantheon. is pretty much a permaban in Pro League of Legends. They try to get him out of support so he can be a solo laner. They found he has been going into the jungle too much. They're trying to do jungle nerfs. So the reduced damage is now working against monsters as well. And there is a longer cooldown on the Q to the tune of 3 to 0 seconds. Now, you're not spamming Q that hard in solo lanes for wave clear, but you are spamming Q a lot in the jungle for poking monsters down. So this is a very, very big double hit against Pantheon. I wonder if it would have been possible to just do 12 to 8. Yes, it would have been a smaller nerf, obviously, but then you would have had clean numbers slightly to the tune of... Am I trolling? I'm maybe trolling. No, but 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Yeah. But the designer wanted an extra 1 second at rank 1. I assume they needed to find numbers where it felt appropriate. I assume, there was, the highly skilled junglers that work at Riot on the gameplay team were like, yeah, it's still too good. I'm still clearing too fast. I trust this was like something given by feedback that, either way, this is still a meaningful nerf. So Pantheon's Q damage is strictly down by 30% against jungle monsters. This is a very big deal. This matters a lot. As far as the cooldown is concerned, yep, it's up 30% up until you get to level 3 or so. Even then, it's still up 24%. Yes, doing a short Q has a cooldown refund, but the percentage points still stay the same. So yeah, you have something that's... what is it? Let's just do this. Yeah, so it's your Q is 54% as good against jungle monsters in the early game, right? It's half as good. The cooldown times the damage cut is halved. That is a very, very, very big deal. So big nerf to Pantheon jungle. Very good job. I am still always a fan of, these reduced damage to monsters being a very elegant jungle solution. It's okay. Just add extra rules to the jungle. It's fine. You don't have to read them very often because who really cares? You play a champion, you just hit Q on stuff. It doesn't affect the thought process of your gameplay in almost any way, but it helps you balance roles. I love design levers like this. And more than I liked the old version, which was, the 2012, 2013 version of Riot being like, we have to make a jungler. Their base armor needs to be at least 30, right? Oh, we need to nerf Jarvan jungle, lower his armor by 3. And it's like, well, okay, but you can just use jungle caps, So I'm a big fan of just saying the word monster in a tooltip somewhere and having that be how you affect jungle balance. Big fan. Rammus, a little bit too strong, is getting a very small nerf to Frenzying Taunts cooldown. You, in fact, max this second, so the cooldown doesn't change till 8+. Rammus definitely is a very, very strong performer. Was generally a fan of Turbo Chem Tank being cheaper. Feels good getting your tools earlier on to the game. Good nerf. Next up, we have buffs to Rel's AP ratios. 0.4 becomes 0.6, 0.3 becomes 0.4. The Unbind cooldown gets shorter, which is nice. The cooldown was scaling in weird spots. Yes, indeed. There was one of the levels was a really weird number. They could have said it, but whatever. Because there's an actual factual number change here, but whatever. And then Magnet Storm gets a really big AP ratio increase. So remember what I talked about a couple of videos ago, where I want to see it be 300 and change for the general AP ratio for an ability. Let's see how we did. So Crash Down, rank 1 through 5, AP ratio old, AP ratio new. And here is the AP ratio, right? It takes 350 to double the damage of rank 5 ability. This is a very good AP ratio, right? The damage of the ability roughly triples. I think this is actually a decent rule of thumb. Triple plus is usually where I think is good, but you don't have to agree with me. That's okay. And the AP ratio lands at about 350 is what I think a reasonable AP ratio is. Not that they really think AP rel is going to be a thing, but these were prohibitively bad AP ratios. You should never build AP if these are your ratios. Straight up, right? These are just bad. Then we have this change. Now, this one's a little bit weird, right? Because Mount Up has an auto attack on top of it. So, if we added, let's say her base AD goes from 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. We're just doing really quick and dirty numbers, right? And then here, let's copy these back over as well. Let's try this, right? If these are our numbers, then, okay, yeah, we're in the realm of possibility, right? If Rel has 100 base AD and Mount Up is rank 5, that means the ability actually does 170. And I think that's reasonable, right? For things that use your auto attack to apply the damage, I think it's reasonable to include the total AD in that. And yeah, the ratio is in the realm of normalcy. Again, the old one was pretty bad. So yeah, this feels like a reasonably normal AP ratio. And then we go into Attract and Repel. We go into the E, where apparently this is no longer getting changed. So I was using an old version of the patch notes. This is no longer actually getting changed. So just kidding, haha. By the way, I just want to point out then that, okay, they're not getting changed, but wow, this is a really, 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 really bad AP ratio. This could have been buffed a lot. and would have been reasonable. But don't consider E a damage tool when using that, when building AP route. Not that you're going to, but again, really, really bad AP ratio. But the final one is Magnet Storm. And Magnet Storm actually, I think, had too high, already a good enough, / maybe even too high of an AP ratio. Now, certainly the base damage is not very high, but 255 AP to double is a lot. In general, the reason I don't like high AP ratios on ultimates is kind of a minor thing. And actually, to be fair, this is something that when it goes too far, players get upset. So the reason I like low AP ratios, or like not AP ratios this good, right? Like these are reasonable AP ratios, which makes this more than reasonable, right? A few things. Okay, so one, you get rank 5 abilities at like level 9 or level 13, right? So you're actually, your total damage output is lower, which means, your 300 AP is only adding, how do I say this correctly? Right, your base damage, your ability is like, 210 or 170 or 300 or whatever, which means, 300 AP adds 210 or 300 or whatever damage. But that's what it takes to double. And the reason I use takes X to double is because this is the ultimate sort of safety net against cooldown wonkiness, right? Like, Rise Q and Cassiopeia E and Karthus Q all have really, really low cooldowns. So, like, let's just use takes X amount of AP to double as our easy, like, consistent metric, because then it's always going to be appropriate, right? It's always going to feel fine. Anyway, the point is that ultimates tend to be very, very bursty, right? Ultimates deal a whole lot of damage. So, like, Veigar ult does a lot of damage all at once. Brand ult deals a whole lot of damage all at once. Even Vel'Koz ult does a whole lot of damage all at once. And there is a rank 3 of that ability that only comes online very late into the game, right? Level 16. With a very high base damage. And if it only took 300 AP to double that very high base damage, you are probably one-shotting people. Also, by the time you get access to that, you have more than 300 AP because you're getting it at level 16. You probably got 450, 500. So you're doing really, really, really absurd amounts of damage, which I would say tends to break a lot of combat interactions. I mean, people play Veigar, some even in pro play, and it's like, yep, I get a bunch of AP and I one-shot you with R. And, okay, Veigar creates free ability power through the kit, but hopefully I'm making at least some degree of sense that, like, you can kind of lose gameplay on ults if the AP ratio just, goes to the moon. The other side of it, and the reason I like low-ish AP ratios on ultimates, or at least, more AP to double, is because, to me, ultimates are a really nice anti-snowball mechanism, where as long as I have my ultimate, we have a chance at winning. Your team can be down 1,000 gold per person, but a 5-man Malphite ultimate, doesn't matter how much gold he has, that ultimate is good. It sets up a shockwave, sets up the misfortune, sets up the rest of your team auto-attacking. Unless you are so screwed on money that they can just tank your entire burst because they have a bunch of durability on you. Like, this is the value of ultimates, is that even if I am behind in gold, like if I'm Malphite and poor, if I'm Orianna and poor, if I'm Misfortune and poor, I can still press R in a well-played team fight and provide value. The more of my budget is in my ults scaling, the less chance I have of being useful when behind, which is already a problem of damage-focused champions because all they can do is scale their damage. They don't have good baselines to rely on, right? They don't have 5-man knockups. They don't have, team-wide hastes. They don't have a way to blind people or stun people. They just have damage output, which is why I like somewhat more tepid AP ratios and AD ratios than ultimates, because it's like you should find a way to tune the ulti to be useful even without a bunch of attack damage. Now, the other side of this is what happened with launch Vel'Koz. The designer took this to a fairly extreme, as far as, I don't remember the numbers, I just know that the designer specifically came in and said, look, I really want Vel'Koz ult to be low AP ratio because I want Vel'Koz who are behind, specifically, to be able to use the ult and feel good about it. Like, it's already hard to ult as Vel'Koz from behind. You have to channel in front of the enemy team for like 3 seconds. That's really tough. And if you're going to make that thing do no damage until you have 500 AP, why even press R if you're behind? You can wave clear at best and then still die to, a Malphite or whatever. But, unfortunately, the numbers were, I guess, so aggressively tuned away from AP that Vel'Koz players felt they were punished for doing well. They said, look, I'm winning, I'm 6-0, and my ult, it does 10% more, like, why bother? Like, this is bad. And so there's certainly some room in the middle. There is probably a range of acceptable AP ratios for an ultimate. That's probably true. I don't know where that lies exactly. I just know that is a totally reasonable thing for players to not feel good about. So, somewhere there is the right number. Anyway, that said, 255 AP to double Rel's ultimate damage is very aggressive, right? It's literally her best AP ratio in the game. Her best AP ratio is doubling the ult. So I'm not a huge fan of that. It does mean that she gets this like really cool high point where, if she's a 200 AP Rel, you're adding 220 and you're getting a 500 damage ultimate, and that feels great. But it means that if you're going to play AP Rel, you're actually an ult bot, because your other ratios like together barely combine to what your ultimate is. And that I, don't love. Anyway, I don't think we're going to see AP Rel, but I am a fan of the numbers like approaching normalcy. Riven is getting a buff because Gore Drinker and Ravenous Hydra are definitely getting nerfed this patch, so she is getting 2 seconds off of Valor's cooldown, which is very, very meaningful. Seraphine is very good. Across all pro leagues so far this year, Seraphine has been played an equal amount as a mid laner and as a bot lane farm. And then those combined are equal to the number of times she's played as a raw support. I know the intent from Seraphine was that she was supposed to be a mid laner. I still feel like Riot are maybe trying to push her that way. These changes are not doing that, though. I would actually say they're probably doing the opposite. I would not mind them doing changes that continue to nerf just support Seraphine, and that the nerfs peter out at level 18. I don't even really mind farm Seraphine in bot lane. Like, I played her some. I think she's actually quite fun. I enjoy farm Seraphine in bot lane. But regardless, yes, Seraphine is definitely objectively OP. And so they are cutting 20% roughly off of stage presence. And they are cutting 16-17% off of surround sound's shield. These are reasonably small nerfs, but here we go. So here is the damage before and after. I assumed linear scaling. Here is the shield before and after. The shield actually is not completely linear. There are specific breakpoints. The breakpoints are actually written down here. I killed the decimals because I don't care. But if you're a wiki editor, these are the actual numbers, by the way. You'll have to get the decimals yourself. Actually, here, I guess for funsies, here you go. Here's the decimals. There are no decimals. Good to know. The old one had decimals, right? The old one did? Yeah, the old one had decimals. Okay. So there you go. These are the actual numbers, by the way. So you don't have to like spend time going into the game in practice tool and leveling up one at a time. These are the actual numbers of stage presence, just so you know. But yeah, it's actually nerfed more in the mid game, which I find kind of interesting. Just that's where the numbers were chosen. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. It is interesting to me, but it is a bigger nerf than it looks on paper because of this. Shyvana, for pretty much the entirety of time, has been a better AD than AP champion. But it loves to rationalize why. Like, well, they're just picking her in the... No, they're not. She's just better as an AD champion. Stop playing AP Shyvana. AD Shyvana is played about as half as often as AP Shyvana. And is consistently far, far, far more powerful. It is not close. It is not close. AD Shyvana is bonkers good. AP Shyvana is kind of troll. That said, right, they are aware that AD Shyvana is good as a fighter and tank. AP Shyvana has been dragging behind in the new season. That was good. So here's some AP ratio buffs to her other abilities. I'm glad they're buffing her in ways that are not the E does more damage. That's pretty troll. I honestly wouldn't... Here's the interesting thing, right? So when Riot did the Master Yi rework a while ago, there's basically two Master Yis. There was AD Master Yi, which relied on E in the ultimate, and then you would like use Q to dodge spells, but otherwise it was a bad ability. And there was AP Master Yi, which relied on Q and the resets coming out of the ultimate, so that you could Q some more and just nuke people. And AP Yi really only had one button, which is kind of boring. And it was kind of unhealthy because you're just doing like, if I reset, I win the game. If I don't reset, I'm trash. And ADE also kind of only had 2 abilities because Q did magic damage and was based on an AP ratio because it was an old champion design. This is before Riot really gave abilities AD ratios, and they remedied that finally. And so they made Master Yi an AD champion, but they put both parts together. Q had an AD ratio. You could reset Q cooldown just by auto attacking. It could even crit, which was fun. It was pretty cool stuff. Like, you have the Q reset gameplay and the auto attack gameplay, and you're now a complete champion. In general, when a champion only uses 1 button or 2 buttons, they're not a well-designed champion. So things like old AP Scion didn't have an E or an ultimate. It was not a good design. So they're saying, okay, look, AP Shyvana only pressing 1 button, that's kind of troll. So, okay, here, AP Shyvana runs faster. Okay, sure. Why not? AP Shyvana actually has some Q, some beat to the Q. You're getting a 0.25 and a 0.15 AP ratio on top. So here, for example, here is Shyvana with 100 ability power. Obviously, you can't get 100 AP at level 1, but here is Q's damage, assuming you are maxing it last, I believe. Yeah, maxing it last. So, here's where the rank ups happened, actually. This is with 100 ability power, though. 100 ability power, of course, just flat 40 damage. But yeah, actually pretty meaningful damage increase. I mean, you're getting 100 AP by like this point in time anyway. This is a pretty big bump, right? This is a pretty big deal. Considering that Q is an attack reset, you're kind of getting this instantly. Yeah, you might have already gotten Nash's Tooth or been partway there by now and whatever, but this is pretty meaningful. What this is doing a little bit, though, is it is making AP Shyvana and AD Shyvana kind of have the same play style. Now, certainly AP Shyvana's E is way more powerful, but they are trying to make the rest of the kit kind of function. Even the idea of maybe going AP Bruiser Shiv, where you're doing, Riftmaker and these kinds of items and Demonic Embrace, and I'll have enough AP that it's good, but, I'm going to be, like, I think that's reasonable as well. Right? It's a decent way to go. Again, more move speed, sure, feels good, but I like this, right? I like having AP Shyvana use more than 1 button on the kit, and then possibly going into a world where you're actually just combining the kits together and finding a way to just have Shyvana, just be one cohesive champion where the E still feels good. I'm not sure. Next up is Singed getting a 10% AP ratio buff on Poison Trail, which is a pretty big deal. It's 1/8 higher. That's not bad. Here is Singed with 100 AP before and after. Yeah. Reasonably meaningful buff. Good job. Sylas. So this is actually interesting, is a lot of Sylas players still max Q. W max is more powerful, although Q max is still reasonably popular. And I think Sylas is in a good spot. He is healthy if you can actually choose which way to go for, right? If I'm not going to get Kingslayer off, and I'm going to leave it as a 1-point wonder, and I'm going to max Q for things like Wave Clear, okay, well, you are punished less for maxing Q. Now, technically, yes, you are indeed weaker if you are going to leave Q at 1 point for a while, absolutely. So, if we are leaving Q at 1 point until level 8, it is an objective nerf, right? But if we're maxing Q, it's a buff. Well, it's equal at 3, and then it's a buff from 5 onwards, right? It's a buff for all of this, which is pretty good. Obviously, W is a buff no matter what. It's 5 damage. The AP ratio increase is 6%. This is. I mean, I would argue this is a strict buff even to W max Sylas, because the 5 damage is going to make up for the 5 mana here. That's still going to be, better from this point onwards. So Sylas is getting objectively buffed in W max, but Q max is getting even more objectively buffed. Like, Q max is obviously getting this for free. 5 flat damage, 5% more AP, easy, just better. And then, yeah, the Q cost is better from level 5 onwards, champion level 5 onwards. So, cool beans. Glad to have this. I am generally a big fan of any time Riot tries to help more ability orders work. That's not the most important thing. There are going to be, I think, plenty of champions where it is unhealthy to do that, but generally speaking, am a fan. But, things like Janna Tornado could scale damage way harder on rank. And look, throw in a minion cut if you have to. But, the idea of being Q-Max Janna, no one's ever doing it at all, right? But why not? Why not the possibility? Who's it going to hurt? Things like that. Can Vayne's Condemn be worth maxing ever? Like, it technically goes up in damage, but who cares? Like, why not allow that to be a possibility? What, can the cooldown scale more aggressively? Can the damage go up even higher? Are there damage numbers that are just not okay for Condemn? Does it have to go to 500 damage to be used? Is that way too troll? Probably. Again, some things might just not work. But it's a thought, that's all. Taliyah is getting a revert of her previous nerf. I know there were players who were upset that Taliyah was getting pushed into jungle. That said, it has still been her most popular role. And I think she has also just got more interesting gameplay from the jungle than elsewhere. But that said, I like that they're taking a different nerf, and they're also unwinding nerfs that hurt support and mid Taliyah. So that's cool. I am concerned about Taliyah being a flex pick down the line. That can always be somewhat of an issue. But they are saying, okay, take the move speed back. We're going to revert this one. And instead, we're going to lower your jungle damage output, which is, yeah, the more relevant jungle-specific nerf. And honestly, probably the better of the two changes. So that's good. So the move speed is back. Congratulations. Your out-of-combat move speed is up 7 to 4% again. And here is the damage to monsters. It is still a lot, right? Now, to be fair, rank 1 Q is I want to say it's like a 9-second cooldown. It's like quite long. It is meaningfully long, and then rank 5 is absurdly short. Obviously, the more AP you buy, this percentage stays the same. It is a full percentage damage changer. Your PvP damage doesn't change. Your damage to minions doesn't change. Your damage to champions doesn't change. But your monster damage is going down 16% on a full Q. Now, the rest of your clear after level 1, you're going to use other abilities. At level 3, you're going to use other abilities. Level 4, you're going to have other abilities. So, you're not, your whole clear is not down 16%, but this is a very, very meaningful jungle clear speed nerf. This means like leashless red is a lot slower. And yeah, Taliyah jungle is going to lose some win rate. There's a really good chance Taliyah is no longer the, number 1 or 2 jungler in League of Legends, at least for pro, after the patch, which is, I think, totally fair. Udyr has been taking over as well by a lot. Basically, Phoenix Max tank Udyr got really good because they kept buffing Phoenix Udyr. That makes sense. Udyr is incredibly, incredibly dominant. Absolutely true. I'm glad that Riot's being reasonably quick about nerfing some overperforming junglers, right? Who are the top 2 junglers in the league right now, especially in pro? Pantheon, Taliyah, Udyr, all 3 getting hit. Great. Love it. I mean, these are well targeted. Good job, Riot. These are good nerfs. Olaf, number 4, also got hit. Good. That's a big positive. So good job there. Yeah, sure, Nidalee's still around there, and Graves still around and whatnot, but like that pool gets pretty wide pretty fast after those 4. So I'm a big fan. Here is the damage. Technically, I guess right here it would be 275 and 300 and 275. Great. So, unless I'm like really trolling on numbers, but I think this is right? 45, 45. Yeah, these are the numbers. Okay. So, yep. I went one level early, but it's fine. Here we go. Bam, we did it. Okay, there we go. Those are the numbers. But yeah, this is going to be felt quite a bit. Obviously, you're rank 2 Phoenix level 3, so your damage already starts getting cut down a bit when that goes on. The active aura damage, so not the Phoenix Scout, not the auto attack damage, none of that. This is a honestly fairly small nerf. All things considered, I think Phoenix Udyr is still going to be in a very, very good spot. We'll see how people do as they keep kind of figuring out builds and whatnot, but I expect Udyr to still be a pretty big mainstay. Because I don't think the aura damage going down by 7% is going to mean that much in the grand scheme of things. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel. Vladimir hasn't been doing the hottest, so they're going to just buff him in the early game. 30 and 15 seconds off of early ult cooldowns are going to be meaningful. Again, this is going to look bigger on paper than it's probably going to be in the real world, but is a nominal buff to Vladimir, and that's cool. All right, so some of these items actually missed. So I actually missed the Lichbane and Horizon Focus ones when I wrote stuff down. So sorry we don't have these, but applicable from better ranges. Horizon Focus. One of the issues I had with Horizon Focus was it wasn't really even gold efficient for the ability power, and it felt kind of bad. So I'm glad this is going better. Lichbane apparently is overperforming still. So I mean, it's incredible. It's like the 3rd nerf to Lichbane now. I'm surprised it's doing that well, but fair enough. Horizon Focus, yeah, I think was in a bad spot, so I'm glad to see that buff. But now we go to the stuff that I did do the math for. So Verdant Barrier, instead of getting MR over time, So it's basically over the course of 5 minutes, unless you're taking damage. It is over the course of 30 CS, with perfect CS is brain. Come on. 2.5 minutes. Yep. Yeah, okay. So basically the timing of the full upgrade is going to be about the same. Because, average players get about 7 CS a minute. So if you're getting 7 CS per minute and you need to get 30, it's 4 and change, right? Because 4 times 7 is 28, and you need 30 kills. So about 5 minutes, and yeah, about 5 minutes. Now, if you're taking damage a lot, Verdant Berry is going to stack, faster. If you're CSing really, really well, then maybe you can do it faster as well. But either way, this is similar-ish timing. And it's a lot cheaper by 200 gold. That's a pretty big deal. 200 gold cheaper for Verdant Barrier. So here we go. Verdant Barrier, 200 gold cheaper. We're just going to kind of do this so that you just look at the bottom of the screen. So, yep, Verdant Barrier goes to basically being gold efficient, right? It is now a gold efficient item, and you're still going to get 15 adaptive MR over the course of time. Yeah, that's a much better item. This item is no longer absolute trash. Good job, Riot. We did it. Considering how good Arm Guard and Hex Drinker and things were, yeah, good to see an item at least on that power level. So Banshee's Veil, before you say, wait, it got nerfed, keep in mind Verdant Barrier got cheaper. So this gets 15 more ability power for really 100 more gold. 15 AP for 100 gold is outstanding. That costs 300 gold. So Banshee's Veil is in a really good spot. Look at this. Yes, it was gold efficient, and then you got your spell shield. Sure, whatever. Your Verdant Barrier is also gold efficient once stacked, but it was gold efficient, and then you got a spell shield for fun. So okay, great. Now it's an outstanding item. Right, it's 200 gold more efficient, which is I think kind of what you're looking for with completed items anyway. With again the free spell shield. This is an outstanding item. 2600 for 2800 gold stats. Looks very, very strong. 80 ability power is a great amount of ability power. Good job there. This is a very good item now. Mages should feel very good about getting Banshees. And then they nerfed Seeker's Arm Guard by 100 gold and kept that on to Zhonya's Hourglass. It just keeps the 100 gold nerf. So where are we at with Arm Guard and Zhonya's? Well, Arm Guard, indeed. Assuming I'm doing this right, I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah. Arm Guard, interestingly enough, now actually doesn't come in gold efficient. However, it stacks twice as hard. So I find this kind of interesting, actually, that, when we look at something like Verdant Barrier, and it's like, yeah, you're paying for all the stats, and then you stack on top. With Arm Guard, the old version was you paid for all the stats and then stacked on top, and the stacks went pretty far. Now they've kind of reverted places, right? Because Verdant Barrier got very buffed, and Arm Guard got, moderately nerfed. Now Arm Guard's in a spot where you are paying for the stacking. Now that said, the stacking goes much higher, right? When you're half stacked, it's efficient, and when you're full stacked, it's gravy, right? It's 1,330 gold worth of stats for 1k. It's about 1,300 gold worth of stats for 1k. So the end result for both these items is the same. You're just paying, a sort of bigger upfront cost for Arm Guard here. That doesn't have to be a problem. That can be fine. That doesn't, I'm not saying it is a problem. It's okay for items to be sort of different here. But it is kind of where they changed places. Certainly Zhonya's is very good. Could stand to be nerfed, as its components could be as well. But I just find it interesting, that's all. So anyway, Zhonya's Hourglass, by the way, is now also where Banshee's was. It is roughly gold efficient, and then you're paying for the active. That said, I think this is reasonable. So one thing that, in the name of consistency could be done, but I don't think is a good idea, is in the name of consistency, we can make every item the exact same gold efficiency and then just tune the actives and passives to be what you're paying for as free gold. I think that is probably overly restrictive. I think a world where the Zhonya's active is as good as the Banshee's passive because you're changing cooldowns or durations or whatever, I think puts you into really weird spots where I think you'd rather just have Zhonya's just be sub 100 gold efficiency and Banshee's just be a bit on top and saying, yeah, you're buying an efficient item that happens to have a spell shield on top, right? You're buying this so you can survive, magic damage. I think that's totally reasonable. I don't think you have to be like super anal on consistency in terms of like what you're paying for. So that is one place where I think consistency does not need to be required, and I am glad that it's not there. Next up, enchanter items. Some of them have been definitely too good. So Staff of Flowing Water getting poached by a bunch of people. You buy this item basically every game. So here's your 60 AP. You're giving people AP and stuff as well. This item was already gold efficient and then had a really, really good, set of stuff there. So now, yep, you're paying 175 or so for the buff, but you're getting the buff pretty reliably. Again, yeah. It's cute to think of an idea of an item. It's like, yeah, it's gold efficient. And then you get a passive. It's a support item. They're efficient because they're cheap. But 60 AP for 300, like that was better than old Banshees, right? Like, why would I buy Banshees when I can just buy this? This is all like probably a better active anyway, assuming I can shield anyone at all. Like if I'm Orianna, I'll just take Flowing Water and just get a bunch of moose speed because I shielded someone. It's probably just the better item. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Either way, still a very good item. Totally okay with the nerf. Future Fire now has 5 more ability haste, and now you still get the 40% grievous wounds for applying magic damage to people. But now, if you heal or shield a teammate, their next bit of damage applies big grievous wounds. So that's very interesting, right? This is now not I'm Seraphine when I land hard CC, it happens. It's I'm Seraphine when I press W, my teammates apply it. This is very powerful. Like, in general, I would say this is now a much stronger item. Obviously, it gained 5 more ability haste, so the gold efficiency is up. And look, we're back in a world where we have 100% gold efficient item with a buff on top. I think for buffs that can be hard to value, this is fine. Things like a Banshee's Shield, things like Puffcap Toxin, I think it's kind of reasonable. But also, whatever. It's also, it's got mana regen on it. It's hard to say that this is really 500 gold with the mana regen that you're really going to want that. Like, if this was 80 AP, 20 haste, this would be a better item than if it had mana regen on it, right? You just buy this on every mage, pretty much outright. So, just something to keep in mind. Actually, be more like 85 AP, but whatever. Anyway, the real point going on here is this is a good item now, right? This is a very, very, very good item. You should buy it. And yeah, this should feel outstanding. This is a very, very good item. Fighter items also getting updated because they were not in great spots. So Silverbeard Dawn gets 5 AD and 100 health. That is a lot of stats. That's several hundred in stats. So here's old and new. Was not gold efficient, although you were paying for Quicksilver. It was gold efficient from QSS itself. If you buy QSS, you're paying 760 for the active. As you can see here, you're only really paying 620. So yes, you were 5% more gold efficient, but that feels kind of bad. Finishing a legend, I guess what I've kind of realized is finishing a legendary to be 5% more gold efficient does not feel good to do. That is not what you hope you're paying for with those kinds of items. And so now you are way more than that, right? You are 20% gold efficient. You are paying 170 for a 700 gold active. That is pretty great. Silvermere is going to feel a lot better. It is a very good frontline fighter item to survive and be cool and great. Good job. Let's go. Yeah, I mean, this gets put in a very good spot. It's good enough that I would really consider it as an AD carry as well. One difficulty you can have as an AD carry is your MR options are really, really limited. If you go Shield Bow, you can't go Maw anymore. And that can be a really big problem when you're like, oh my gosh, I'm against a bunch of magic damage, a bunch of it. Like, they have Fizz. They have Karthus. They have Echo. They have, I think of another magic damage assassin, Katarina. And it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta go Shield Bow. Oh, I can't build the best MR item in the game because I went Shield Bow. I can't go Maw now. Okay, I'll go Gale Force so that I can go Maw. That feels bad, right? Silvermere Dawn existing and not being trash means I can actually feel pretty good about going. I can feel good about going Shield Bow into Silvermere. Because I think the problem I have with going QSS and its upgrade, it is literally the only other MR item I can buy that isn't a tank item. Wit's End is a possibility as well, right? It's like I can buy Wit's End, I can buy one of the 2 QSS items, and or I could buy Hextrigger if I didn't go Shield Bow. Like, those are the only options that I can think of. Maybe I'm forgetting one, and that's totally possible. It's the only options I can think of that I even have that have MR on them. And I can't buy one of them if I went Shield Bow, the other defensive option. And QSS has like 30 MR on it, and that's it. So I'm paying 3,000 gold for Mercurial Scimitar for a Null Magic Mantle. That feels bad. I don't want the QSS active against Katarina. That feels bad as well. But if I can buy Silvermere Dawn, I'm like, look, I'm only really paying 170 for the active. I'm getting gold efficient attack damage, health, and MR. I will feel good about buying this item. Like, with Shield Bow and this, I have replicated Maw of Malmortius while also getting QSS active for things like stuns and whatnot, and I have the bigger shield because Shieldbow's shield is really good, and it has lifesteal all the time. Like, this is now within the realm of comparison, and to where like I will actually consider buying these kinds of things on an AD carry if I really care about magic damage. So I think that's in a good spot. Next up, big updates to marksman items, and I am the biggest fan of this. I put out a video 2 years ago talking about how I would fix marksman items. And it was throw a pickaxe onto every Zeal item. Give every AD carry item attack damage on it. Well, they tried with Hurricane and no one liked it. So maybe I was wrong. But they're doing it with Phantom Dancer, and instead of pickaxes, 2 longswords. And they're also doing what I think is smarter, which is they're keeping the size of the item the same. Instead of making Hurricane cost 3,400, they put it back down. PD has the same cost, so now it is Zeal, Longsword, 20 AD, 25 AS, and the stacking is a little bit faster. So the stacking is not worth quite as much AS, but it stacks faster. And so here is new Phantom Dancer. The old Phantom Dancer was some move speed, a lot of AS, and a lot more AS. It was a large amount of attack speed. Now that's made this item live in a really weird spot, because it basically fought Hurricane for your second item slot. Are you someone with a lot of on-hit effects? Do you want to apply them to one target? Go Phantom Dancer. If you want to apply them to multiple targets, go Hurricane. And then like Rage Blade's in there as well as like your next option. That's not necessarily a problem, but it also made the champions who wanted this item really narrow. And they already really kind of liked Hurricane, so it was really hard to find yourself liking Phantom Dancer. And so Riot, I think correctly so, are broadening the item quite a lot and opening a lot of other possibilities to a lot of other champions, because now it is not 85% attack speed in one item and no other offensive stats. It is a much more reasonable 55 AS and 20 AD, which is still a lot of stats, is still going to feel very good, but is, as you can kind of see here, a much more efficient item, right? Instead of paying 400 for Waltz and getting it sometimes, you are paying 200 for Waltz, and it's still very good. Look at the overall gold efficiency as well. We're at, 135? And this is still about 135. So the total efficiency of the item, even when fully stacked, is about the same. And keep in mind, the stacking happens more easily because it's 4 autos instead of 5. That's a pretty meaningful thing. And I would argue the build path is much better because early attack damage is incredibly good. So this is a very large buff to Phantom Dancer. I think this item is super usable. And it is, I think, basically the purest raw damage item an AD carry can buy. If you're an attack speed scaler, it still feels good, because if you're using attack speed, you're still going to use raw AD because you're auto-attacking. And if you're someone like Jinx who already has a lot of attack speed on something like Minigun, you're probably still going Hurricane, but like this feels kind of reasonable. Turns out you don't need pickaxes, you just want double longswords, but you get there. You get some pretty solid items. Now, I will say, realistically, with the combined cost being this high, they really could have gone pickaxe. I'm not saying they had to by any means, but, they really could have said this is pickaxe plus, 675, whatever the gold actually is. And, yeah, this means it has 25 AD, it's more efficient. They'd have to retune something around there, but I don't know. I would be a fan of 2,700 gold Zeal upgrades that all have pickaxes on them. Just personally, I'm not a fan of Kirchai Shard myself for things like RFC, but either way, great. Absolute big fan. Love it. Love this item. They're also buffing Shield Bow, because Shield Bow is definitely getting under-purchased. Again, Shield Bow alongside Silvermere Dawn feels like it's going to be actually pretty usable. 5 AD, 5 more attack speed. This now puts Shield Bow on the exact same stat profile on these lines as Gale Force. Shield Bow now just has attack speed as Gravy. Lifesteal as Gravy on the item. It is 5 AD and 5 attack speed less than Kraken Slayer, which makes sense. If Kraken Slayer ever had the least base stats on the item, that would be a miss. The base stats absolutely need to reinforce the value of the item. Kraken Slayer is the offensive one. Shield Bow doesn't need to be the don't deal damage one, just needs to be the more defensive option. It is on par with Gale Force. That's fine. And instead of Gale Force active, it has this shield. Okay, I'm on board, right? I think this lines up pretty well. I think this is totally reasonable. Shield Bow, it already was gold efficient, and then it gave you a mythic passive and a great active. Well, okay, it was technically a passive, but you know what I mean. It is now just 300 gold efficient more, and still those same things. This is a very big off the shield bow. This is going to be meaningful. This is obviously going to be a buff to Yasuo and to bad Yones who don't go Gale Force already, because Gale Force should be what you buy on Yone, by the way. It's a really big deal. You should go Gale Force on Yone. It's outstanding. You should do it. But yeah, good to see some nominal buffs here to these items. I'm a fan. Lord Dominic's course buffed as well by 5% more armor, by 10% more armor pen. That's obviously pretty nice. Once again, an item that was gold efficient and then had Giant Slayer on top. Now it's more so. It is always weird using armor pen as a gold efficiency metric because it is only ever derived from one item, and that's Last Whisper. And that's not really a fair comparison because it's also the only thing it ever builds into is Lord Dominic's and Cyrilda's. So it's self-referencing, and that's just weird. But, you know, is out there. The rest of these, I did not math them out because ultimately, much for the same reason that doing them for Lord Dominic's is kind of facetious, these were in the same boat where, obviously, okay, look, this active got quite a bit weaker. Good job. Leeching Leer, half the Omnivamp, but 100 more health. But Omnivamp's value is derived off Leeching Leer, so that's not a reasonable gold efficiency metric. But half the Omnivamp is a pretty big deal. Riftmaker, half the Omnivamp, pretty big deal. Mythic passive, you get the Omnivamp back over time. I'm actually a fan of Riftmaker not having % magic pen on it, by the way, because why is, like, I understand the stat does reference, like, what you're using it for, right? If I'm vamping, it's because I'm probably fighting tanks and, you know, drain tanking them and surviving, but, like, why not just be more pure about it? I am actually a fan of this one. In general, keep in mind you're losing 7% Omnivamp, so it's only as much Omnivamp once you hit 4 legendaries. That's very, very end game. But that's okay, because keep in mind, you're still getting 8 AP, you're still getting 150 health on top. You're, of course, also losing Magic Pen. I'm not saying this is a strict buff to the item, but this is not garbage. Eclipse is getting a bigger shield to the tune of 20%, but losing some Omnivamp. Ravenous Hydra, Omnivamp going down by a third. Steric's Gauge losing 100 off the shield, and the duration is going down as well. This is really, really good, though, because ultimately they are nerfing a lot of the you know, places where healing is existing in the game. This is good. Good job, Riot. Healing definitely crept up way too much this season. It needed to go back down, so kudos. Good job on catching this. Still not a fan of Ravenous Hunter, but they're saying, look, this is going to be less sustained early game. These items have more objective health. There is a number out there, right, where like this number changes. So let's see. If I did 2,000 damage, 7% of 2,000 is 140, right? So this is balanced if I do 2,000 damage in a fight before dying. That is about accurate for most team fights, by the way. So to be clear, in a generic team fight, this is power neutral. Now, in a long laning phase where I'm sustaining off of minions, this is obviously power down. If I'm not doing well and I'm dying really fast and don't get 2,000 damage out, then absolutely, right, this is weaker. Also keep in mind, Omnivamp is 1/3 effective for AoE. So if I'm doing 2,000 damage through Singed Poison, I actually need 6,000 damage through Singed Poison. I'm not doing 6,000 damage in a fight with Singed Poison. So in a lot of cases, this is objectively a stronger item. I want to be really clear about that, right? That like 2,000 damage or 6,000 for AoE is the break point here for all of these changes. Let's see, you know, what does a shield of, you know, plus 30 give me at 2%? 1,500? 1,500 at 2%, I believe, is plus 30, right? That is, yeah, look, if I'm doing someone's entire health bar with Eclipse, yeah, I'm omnivamping, you know, the amount of shield I'm gaining here. But otherwise, this isn't really an objective nerf in a lot of these cases. It is less sustained between waves. That makes it a nerf in the overall gameplay. But in terms of team fighting, this is not that. Hydra just directly nerfed. Okay, yep, makes sense. Steric's Gauge being a lot weaker is good. One of the big things with Steric's is you would just, every single game, you would just go Gore Drinker Steric's, and you'd be invincible. Because by the time Steric's would pop, you'd be low enough that you get a big Gore Drinker heal. And the shield was gigantic without any other health. It would last a long time. You couldn't really just ignore it. You'd fight them for too long. And so you're kind of just catch-22 off of Gore Drinker Steric's. Good to see the combo go down. Well done, Riot. Tank items, also a bit nicer. These I definitely could have jumped into a little bit, but I did not. A bit more move speed on Force of Nature. Okay. Dead Man's Plate losing 200 gold worth of health is a really, really big cut to its power level. This is a really, really big hit. This is obviously also a nerf to Rammus and to Udyr. Udyr also buys this, but he buys it after Deadman's. But the fact that this is getting better means it gets to more cleanly compete with Deadman's, so I'm a fan of that one. And then Frozen Heart, I think, is just kind of a bad item. It's getting 200 gold cheaper for 10 less armor. That is what 10 armor costs, is 200 gold. So they're just kind of shrinking the item down to be, an achievable support item at 2,500. I still think Frozen Heart should have health on it so that it doesn't feel so bad to buy, because not getting any health feels very, very bad. That said, though, fair enough. All right, we went pretty long in this one because it did a lot of talkings about things. Let's TLDR patch 11.3. A lot of buffs, a lot of nerfs. Anivia, definitely quite a bit weaker. Not much to say. It's just damage down, cooldown's worse. EMAX Cho'Gath got weaker. Every other Cho'Gath is fine. Elise lost pretty substantial damage on her Q. The base damage is actually more of the damage than percent health damage, so pretty big deal on human Q. Skittering Frenzy is weaker from levels 8 onwards. I don't think that's that big of a deal. Ezreal gets a pretty meaningful damage increase on Q. That's going to be nice. Ivern no longer has absurd health for a range champion, and 0-20 off the trigger seed is a pretty big deal, so those are pretty big nerfs. Jinx has real champion health now, finally. This is a very big deal to get bonus range on Switcheroo, and honestly, some pretty meaningful attack speed growth. What this really means, by the way, is about 10% more attack speed in uber late game for Jinx, and like 2 to 3% more attack speed in the early game. This DPS gain is not as big as you might think, but this is a pretty big deal. Flame Chompers cost more, but it arms faster. That's pretty nice. Karma gets some more regen, which tends to be support skewed, and cheaper Qs, which can definitely help her solo lane as well. We'll see how it goes. Mordekaiser 2 seconds off the E cooldown is going to be a nice nominal buff. Olaf loses 22 health, which is something. It's not gigantic, but it matters. This translates to about 6 to 10% less auto-attack DPS at most points in time. That's the math, basically. 6 to 10% of like total DPS, which is a pretty big deal. Olaf's going to lose a lot. Pantheon is losing a 30% damage against monsters and has a 30% cooldown increase in the early game, which is like a 40% Q overall DPS like cut. That said, walking between camps, the cooldown might just come back anyway, so it's not quite that bad. But a big Pantheon jungle there for sure. Rammus at level 8 and onwards gets a slightly longer Frenzying Taunt cooldown. Not a huge deal, but is a nerf. Rel gets AP ratios in the realm of normalcy and some minor cooldown buffs, which is nice. To just unbinding and whatnot. Magnet Storm gets a really big AP ratio. I don't think AP Rel is going to be good, but there you go. 2 seconds off of Riven's E cooldown because her Gordic Revenant Hydra getting nerfed. Fair enough. Seraphine is getting nerfed pretty flat amounts, to be honest. This is the same at 1 and 18 percentage-wise. This is basically 20%. This is basically 17%. Just overall nerf to Seraphine. Yeah, she's doing too well. Shyvana is getting AP ratio buffs to her non-E abilities. AD and tank Shyvana are outstanding. They are very, very good. AP Shyvana is not good. So buffs to AP Shyvana that aren't her nuke. Fair enough. Singed, pretty minor buff to his Q. That should feel pretty solid. Sylas may still not max Q first, but there's a lot of Sylases who do, and it's going to be less bad since the mana cost won't scale quite as hard, really at all. So it's a buff to Q max Sylas. It's overall probably still a buff to all Sylases, since 5 flat damage and 0.05 on the AP ratio is a strict buff. Taliyah is getting her move speed back and now does, I want to say it's like 13% less damage to jungle monsters. Here, we can pull that back up. Here's Taliyah, 60% less damage to jungle monsters. Pretty meaningful. Udyr is losing 5, 10, 13% of his Phoenix damage. That's, somewhat meaningful. Sorry, 5, 7, 8%. Not gigantic, but, it's a nerf. Vladimir, early game buff to his rank 1 and 2 ult cooldown. Pretty small buff, but nice to see it. Lichbane, weaker, Horizon Focus, stronger. Verdant Barrier is now a very good item. It is gold efficient before the passive, which means it's a very good item. Banshee's Veil is very efficient. Seeker's Arm Guard and Zonias are getting a bit weaker, but are still good items. But this is a pretty big deal. Really, really consider Verdant Barrier and Banshees now. These are very strong. Enchanter items. Yeah. It basically means that if you are playing like Xerath into Fizz, you shouldn't feel bad about doing this. You can set on Verdant Barrier and it's a good item. And you can go Banshee's second item and it's good. So this is a very big deal. Very, very, very big deal for like poke mages to feel good against AP assassins. Staff of Flowing Water losing 10 AP, still a very good item. Putrefier is now gold efficient without the Puff Cap Toxin, but now you give the Grievous Wounds buff to people that you shield and heal. This is a very big deal. It should be a very, very, very strong item. Silvermere Dawn is now very good as well, and I should think that many marksmen will want to poach it if they want to survive magic damage assassins. Iron Spike Whip no longer has the extra passive on it. Great. Phantom Dancer now builds out of longswords and is a very, very good item. You should really consider PD as a second item now. The idea of going like Gale Force or Shield Bow into PD second, into IE third is going to feel outstanding. This is going to be a very, very good single target DPS build. Really, really, really consider PD second. This item should be great. Shield Bow is much stronger and should be a real consideration. Dominic's is going to be 10% more armor pen, should feel really good as well, as a probably only ever 4th item purchase, but should feel good there as well. Gorge Drinker, quite a bit weaker, less missing health. Leeching Leer, Riftmaker, Eclipse. Basically, they're all tuned to the point where if you are going to heal off of about 2,000 outgoing damage, that is going to make up for the health or shield difference. That is the rough tuning here. Which means in a lot of fights, this is actually an objective buff. It's going to be weaker, though, in terms of healing between waves. Revenant's Hydra, objectively nerfed. Steric's Gauge, objectively nerfed. Good choices there. Tank items, Force of Nature up, Deadman's Plate down, a lot. 75 health is a lot. It is 200 gold worth of health. That is a very big deal. Deadman's is going to be substantially weaker next patch. You're going to be a lot squishier with Deadman's next patch. I know 75 doesn't seem like a ton, but it's a big deal. Frozen Heart is cheaper overall. I want to point out 200 gold is what 10 armor costs, so it's just a smaller bundle of the same stats. And Clash is coming. There's Air Earth changes and a bunch of bug fixes and stuff. Cool stuff. That's it for me. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you for LCS opening day on Friday. Bye.